Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. We're here to break down the Dublin game from last night. It was Kerry 115, Dublin 19 points, and what a win it was. What a comeback, what a story from a Dublin perspective, and what a win it was. The first time Dublin win on Kerry soil since 2013, and the first time they win in Tralee since 1982. They probably haven't played that many times in Tralee, to be fair, but it is still one hell of a statistic right there. And incredible. I was watching the game. I was out at the time, so hence why there was no match reaction after the game or anything of that nature. And yeah, it was incredible, to be honest, watching it, because in the first half, Dublin were so poor. They looked, completely miles off the pace. I was expecting Kerry to be better than Dublin. And yes, there was a bit of a favourable breeze for Kerry in the first half and definitely for Dublin in the second half. But like Kerry led by 11 points at half time. I think it was 12 at one stage in the first half. But honestly, Kerry could have been 16 or 17 in front. Like, they were miles the better team. Dublin were just nowhere near up for the game at all, and looked absolutely miles off the pace in more ways than one. And you were worried for Dublin. I was worried for Dublin watching the game. You were thinking, it had probably resemblances to when Dublin were relegated, a good few years ago. And although we beat Mayo in the opening weekend, you're looking at how poor they've looked. Obviously, they got a big win today, but you're thinking, right, they beat Mayo in the opening weekend, a little bit poor against Donegal, and then getting absolutely wiped the floor, against wiped over versus Kerry. It signaled a very worrying time for Dublin. I mean, they only scored 1 point after about 20 minutes, and Kerry were cruising. Dublin kicked 4 points in the first half. And it was so comfortable for Kerry. And yes, you obviously have the new rules and everything else coming into play, but it just felt like Dublin weren't taking advantage of that. Like, they weren't trying to work 2-pointers, too much of a running game. When we were getting into good positions, we just weren't shooting. Our decision making was just way off the boil. And there was too many underperformers, it must be said, in that first half. You do have to credit Kerry, though, because they were brilliant in that, kind of opening period. Micheál Burns was very good. Brian O'Buglock, I thought, was impressive as well. Paul Gainey obviously gets his goal. Calamitous defending, really, from Dublin. I've no idea, what they're doing at the back there. A little bit all over the place. Very poor stuff. I think Evan Comerford, from what I remember, kind of playing the ball short. It gets intercepted, and then Gainey obviously puts the ball into the empty net. And Dublin were just really poor, really off the pace. Couldn't win a kick out. Misplaced passes, and it looked like it was definitely the first time. I remember watching the game, saying to one of the lads, like, it looked like for the first time we were missing a leader, we were missing a Fenton, we were missing a Mick Fitz, or someone there just to kind of calm the heads, slow the game down, and sort of just slowly build us back into it. It looked like Dublin had lost their heads completely, really, in that first half. But you're coming out into the second half, you're hoping, let's just make the game respectable. We're obviously playing with the breeze now, so hopefully we can drag the game down. You knew there's probably going to be a bit of a drop-off from Kerry, but when you seen David Clifford come on, you're thinking, right, this could be maybe a bit of a problem. And you saw how Michael Murphy coming on for Donegal today, how much of a difference that made when he came on. So there was a little bit of concern in that moment. And what was interesting from a Dublin perspective was it wasn't like straight away in the second half Dublin just turned the tide and ran after Kerry. Kerry were still kind of keeping us at arm's length. I mean, we had a few moments. Kieran Kilkenny, I remember, kicked a brilliant 2-pointer early on in the second half. Lee Gannon, I thought, was absolutely brilliant as well. Great to see him back in a Dublin jersey, and obviously very disappointing to see him go off injured as well. Hopefully it's not that serious. It did look a little serious, though, at the time. And, having him back, though, like, you saw the difference he made for Dublin in that sort of transition from defence to attack. He was absolutely brilliant. Sean Bugler was very good. But look, I have to commend some of Dublin's bench. Lorcan O'Dell, absolutely brilliant. He's a player who has often been sort of, I suppose, questioned a little bit by Dublin fans. Like, is he good enough to play for Dublin? Young Clare and everything else, probably because we're so blessed with other younger players making the breakthrough. Lorcan O'Dell, it just hasn't quite happened for him yet. But yesterday it did. That was a brilliant performance. Scored two pointers and big moments as well. And Dublin stood up. Luke Bretnock was absolutely brilliant as well, it must be said. Davy Keogh, who came off the bench, I thought made a bit of an impact. And just slowly but surely, we just started to capitalise on it. And you had a big contingency of Dublin fans behind the goal. And it just felt like the momentum was there. And Kerry just sort of lost their heads and lost their way, a bit like Dublin did in the first half. And really, for the first time with these new rules, it felt like Dublin actually had a bit of a plan, because when I was watching Dublin versus Mayo, it seemed a little bit all over the place. It seemed very like we weren't trying to use the new rules. Against Donegal, they always had us at arm's length. They always had us at distance, and we couldn't really push back into the game. But in the second half, it felt like for the first time, Dublin had a bit more of a plan and a little bit more sort of know-how when it came to kind of taking advantage of these new rules. And it was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. I think we were 4 points down going into injury time. And I think we kicked two pointers. It might have been 3 points down, two pointers to obviously win it. Luke Brecknock getting one right at the death as well. An incredible turnaround from a Dublin perspective. How much a win changes things in the context. All of a sudden now Dublin are looking maybe a little bit further up in terms of maybe getting to another league final. Definitely relegation now, I think, should be out of question for Dublin. I think 6 points, probably maybe 7 points, given how competitive this division is, should be enough, in my opinion, to survive any relegation. You're looking at the next game versus Derry. You win that with 3 games left. You have a 5-point advantage. I think it's done and dusted. I definitely don't think we're going down at that stage. So huge, absolutely huge from a Dublin perspective. Tom Lahiff, very good as well. Greg McEnany, I think, has to be commended. And Dublin stood up, and defensively in the second half as well, they were very, very good. David Clifford, who came on, didn't score, so that has to be commended for Dublin. Looked like Sean McMahon was maybe the man who was picking him up, so fair play to him. And a massive win, massive win. Sean Bugler were 4 points on the day. Very good performance from him. For Kerry, it will be a little bit disappointing. Interesting enough, Dublin have now won 3 games in a row versus Kerry. When you factor in the league game last year, the 23 All-Ireland final as well. And I think for Kerry, especially, the big thing for Kerry, I think, has often been, in these kind of big games over the last couple of years, there have been moments where they've slipped away. And look, ultimately, it's the start of the league. You can't read too much into it. I don't think Kerry will get relegated. I think they will be fine. I know they've lost 2 on the bounce, both at home maybe, which is a little bit worrying. But I do think that sort of defensive solidity and that sort of physicality that was instilled in this Kerry team by when Paddy Tally was there looks a little bit gone. And maybe that could be a bit of a concern for Kerry, especially with a couple of away games now to worry about over the coming weeks. But yeah, huge win for Dublin. Fair play to Desi Farrell for rolling the dice, changing it up, bringing those players on, because it was massively needed. And fair play to the younger lads for stepping up as well, because there have been question marks over Dublin in terms of retirements, players leaving and everything else. Can these younger lads step up? And to be fair, they absolutely did. And they did it in one of the toughest environments you can do it in, which is away to a team like Kerry, who, in my opinion, are one of the best teams in the country. So, huge result. And, it definitely makes things interesting now for Dublin. Derry next week, Armagh week after that. I think Tyrone and Galway then in the final 2 games. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out over the next couple of weeks. In terms of man of the match, it's obviously a difficult one because, Dublin were so poor in the first half. You could probably give the man of the match either way. Like for Kerry, I thought Micheál Burns was outstanding. Sean O'Shea obviously kicked 3 points as well. He was very, very good. Thought Jeremy O'Connor had another very good game for Kerry. But if you're looking at it from a Dublin perspective, probably go towards Kieran Kilkenny, just because when Dublin started to turn the tide in the second half, he was such a huge part in that kind of turnaround, kicked a brilliant 2-pointer. I thought he was very, very good for Dublin. And in a team that has not many leaders, he was definitely one who did stand up. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the game in the comments down below. Let me know your opinions on it. Massive win for Dublin. Commiserations to Kerry. I'm sure they will be back. But a massive win for Dublin. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments down below. If you're new to the channel, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And until the next one, we'll speak to you later.